Okay, hi everyone. I am really excited to be talking about Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, and also discussing the connection that she has in astrology. And she is basically found in everyone's chart. Everyone has a Lilith. I use the Black Moon Lilith. There is the asteroid Lilith, and then there is also the Dark Moon Lilith. But I'm going to be basically talking about Black Moon Lilith. And she has a beautiful story to tell that I think all of us can relate to. She is the raw feminine energy. She is in every single person's chart, in a sign, and in a house. And I'm going to just basically get to the meat and bones of it in the presentation. But I just want to say that just by talking about her today and just by learning of her mythology and what she is and who she is and what she wants to communicate already activates that energy in your life. So just be aware of that. Be aware of that after you finish this class and you go out into your life, how she might start actually sort of communicating with you. And that's because she's innately in the collective consciousness. She's innately in the history of humanity, and she's in your cosmic blueprint, which is your birth chart. So just by talking about her, we activate her. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so yes, we are talking about Black Moon Lilith, which is a darker energy. This is a feminine energy, but this is not the divine feminine, quote unquote. This is serpent energy. This is dark energy. This is occult energy. This is something that is in all of us, and some of us are awakened to it, and some of us are not. Okay. So when we are talking about Black Moon Lilith, we are literally talking about certain archetypes. As I mentioned before, Lilith is the raw feminine energy. Raw feminine energy really is not the energy that most of us are familiar with in this type of society. In terms of when things turned more into a patriarchal society. The raw feminine energy is an energy that we don't see every day. And very often when we do see it, and when others have seen it, it has been attacked, it has been demonized, it has been villainized, and essentially it has been hidden. So the archetypes of Black Moon Lilith are the witch, the inner witch in all of us, literally the witch. If we go back to in history, we can see what happened to the witch. She was persecuted. And this could have been male or female, anyone who had that connection with that witch energy and was practicing that. And that could have been something as simple as being in nature and just feeling empowered with what nature could bring you. So the witch, as we know, was killed, persecuted, burnt at the stake. We also have the rebel. Black Moon Lilith is extremely rebellious. She is very aggressive. And that is in direct connection to being suppressed or literally being killed. She is the occultist. Black Moon Lilith is your occultist energy. It's your witch energy. It's your transformative energy. It's the part of you that is the inner sorcerer, and that exists in your chart, your astrology chart. So Lilith tells you where your occult energy is. Occult energy very often is hidden. It's something that a lot of us don't even know we have, but sort of seems to awaken as we make the decision to grow, really. Black Moon Lilith is the dominant female. She is not submissive. She does not want to be submissive. She has always been dominant. That is her identity. That's who she is. She is the femme fatale. She has no problem, I suppose, using whoever it is she needs to use for her sexual energy and her sexual pleasure, and she is not apologetic about it. The symbolism that I would say very much goes with Dark Moon Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, is the owl, the serpent, the wildcat, succubus, and Medusa. Her color is black, and she lives in the void. Okay. When we are astrologically talking about Lilith, she is not connected to a specific sign. However, she is associated with Venus, the feminine. However, this Venus is very much connected to Plutonian energy or Scorpio energy. So there are some astrologers who believe she is actually ruled by the sign Scorpio, because she has the theme innately in her of sex, death, rebirth, power, taboos, occult magic. And even it can even be seen, she can even be associated in terms of practicing magic that can be evil. Lilith does very well in the sign of Gemini. And the reason for that, and I will get into that more in the mythology, but Gemini is the sign of communication. Gemini is the sign of having a voice. It's the sign of speaking. And Lilith does very well in this sign because it gives her a voice. It gives her her ability to speak what she needs and what she wants into existence. And Gemini energy is also trickster energy. And Lilith can be trickster energy as well. So if I'm going to explain Black Moon Lilith, she is not an asteroid, she's not a planet, but she's a geometric point of the moon's orbit, which is known as the apogee. And the apogee is the furthest distance from the moon, which is very significant because Lilith is someone who cast herself out, who left a matrix. And so her apogee is literally almost, some people say it's almost as if that point is ready to leave the moon's orbit. She spends 9 months in a sign. And right now, Black Moon Lilith is currently in Taurus. So Lilith is literally the point where the moon is in isolation. And she is in isolation in our astrology charts. She is in isolation in our psyche. She is removed from us in a sense. And that really is sort of that is the journey of Lilith in a sense. She's in a way supposed to be removed. There's a reason for it. Yes. So now I'm going to get into the legend of Lilith so we can understand a little bit more maybe of what everything I just said, and we can connect it to what the actual mythology and legend of Lilith is. Understanding the mythology and the legend actually will help you understand so much of what she represents. So Lilith is only mentioned once in the Bible, in Isaiah, as a dweller in a waste space, which really connects to the moon being in an isolated space. And the mythology of Lilith stems from ancient times. She's like the primordial energy. Some people say, some scholars believe that Lilith is the first energy before anything, before anyone. Lilith is connected to Jewish folklore, Mesopotamia, Iraq, and Iran. This is sort of where she comes from. And as you can see, that moon beautifully demonstrates kind of what she's telling us about her story. So Lilith was Adam's first wife. She was the first female that was ever created. Lilith was created from the dirt and the ground. She was the first woman. And then Adam was created from the dirt and the ground. So Lilith saw Adam as her equal, and Adam saw her as her equal. In a lot of ways, gender equality is very much associated with Lilith. So Adam and Lilith, the original woman, was living in this relationship with Adam in which they were very happy. They were experiencing equality. There was a beautiful balance. Lilith was celebrated for her inner strength by Adam, her feminine power, her intelligence. She was respected for her gifts. She was admired as well. One of the very important aspects to Black Moon Lilith is that she really embraced her sexuality, her sexual energy, her raw sexual force. She believed that her connection to her sexual force, the sexual urges, her desires, what she felt in her body was her magic. It is what she could use to create what she wanted to create in her life. So her connection with her sexual desires and her sexual power was a huge part of her identity. And in the myth, Lilith really loved being on top when she would make love to Adam. She would let Adam be on top as well, but she loved being on top. In fact, when she would make love to Adam and she was on top, she felt like she could tap into that inner witch, that inner occultist, and, essentially use her feminine magic to create what she wanted. So that was very sacred to her. That was a very big part of her identity. Lilith was sexually empowered. She was allowed to be sexually empowered. She didn't apologize for it. She owned her raw feminine power. She celebrated herself. She celebrated what she looked like. She owned what it was to have a feminine body. She was very proud that she was capable of creating life. She was very proud of what it was to have this very raw, sultry, seductive sexual power. And again, she directly connected it to her occultist, to her witch, to her magic. And she never cut that apart from herself. She never segregated herself from that. It was completely integrated in who she was. So she really enjoyed being sexual in this nature, but that equality in the relationship did not last. And soon Adam began to have an issue with Lilith dominating in the bedroom and also being equal and dominating in the relationship. And as the relationship progressed, this is sort of the connection to sort of when that patriarchal energy starts to sort of take over, or that toxic masculine energy started to take over in the relationship. Lilith began to be silenced. She was being controlled, and the scales of her equality with her partner were no longer balanced. And so Lilith had very high self-worth. She just left. She chose herself. She was like, I will absolutely not stand for this. I'm not going to compromise who I am. You're not any more important than I am, and I have the same power that you have. And she left. And in the myth, God basically sent 3 angels to speak to Lilith and essentially try to bring her back to Adam. But she refused, and she said, why should I go back to Adam? I'm really happy alone. I'm really happy living the life I'm living. And so she was cast away and sent into the underworld. And she was isolated and secluded and removed. And there she was given the name the Mother of Demons. So she was demonized. Her strength was demonized. Everything about her sexuality and her inner strength was also demonized. So these are actually images of how that sort of feminine archetype, Lilith, Black Moon Lilith archetype, was then being shown and promoted to everybody else. And that was just a message of, this is bad. Don't become like her. Don't do this. Okay. So it's really important to sort of understand that mythology. And this is something that in one way or another has happened to all of us. At some point in our lives, we have been cast aside. We've been separated from our true selves. We've had to cut parts of our own self that were powerful and that were strong in order to survive in the current environment that we live in or that we grew up in. This was just a sense of having to survive. And this, in essence, these parts of ourselves are really Lilith. So with astrology, we can understand how to unlock Lilith. We can understand how to unlock her and how to work with her through looking at the natal chart. So unlocking Lilith through astrology and what Lilith represents in the natal chart. Lilith can represent a lot. Most of the time, Lilith is not an easy thing to work with. It's painful. For most of us, it represents shame. It represents our shadow. It has to do with our repressed rage, our grief. It can have to do very much with our own sexuality being dominated or having experienced sexual abuse. It has to do with the injustice. As I said before, I think the main thing with Lilith is the splintered off parts of ourselves that live in this isolated world that we had to forget about, that we had to leave behind. And in a sense, that causes us to have a loss of power, a loss of a voice. And therefore, we begin to, in our life, perhaps if we're not even aware of that, we are unconsciously self-sabotaging ourselves. Lilith lives in the psyche. Astrology is very much connected to psychology. Lilith does dwell in the sign of Scorpio. She's connected to that. Scorpio rules psychology. So Lilith has a lot to do with the subconscious and what is in our psyche that we cannot face and we cannot see. She is a blind spot. And it's very painful. It's not easy. It's something that you can unconsciously be living out your Lilith and you don't even know it. What else does Lilith represent? Well, she does represent sexual power, absolutely. She also represents a lack of being sexually connected to that power or repressing that sexual power for whatever reason. She represents being sexually demonized by others, by the self. She does represent occult power, the inner witch, raw creative power, and the actual feminine body. She also represents anger. Lilith has a lot of anger, and rightfully so. She was literally cast out from her life and hidden because of her strength, because she refused to obey. So Lilith is the fragmented energy of the feminine. She is the feminine energy that's split, the imbalance. It is difficult to sort of operate with this feminine energy because the feminine energy has to, in order to survive, play nice, as we can see from the right, and sort of separate herself from when she doesn't want to play nice. But really, Lilith is about bringing that together and integrating that. Black Moon Lilith is our shadow. She wants to be seen and she wants to be heard. This is the key to understanding Lilith energy. It's the key to working with her. If you are walking around in your life, and most of us are actually, where your Lilith energy is not seen and not heard, the energy of Lilith will bring a lot of disruption in your life. Not consistently. This happens based on when something's transiting or based on when you're starting to confront certain things in your own life. It could be based on when you're starting to work on certain things in therapy. But if the energy of Black Moon Lilith is not brought to the conscious mind, it will continue to eat its own energy and cause disruption. Because again, what does she want? She wants to be heard. She wants to be seen. She doesn't want to be hidden anymore. So, astrologically speaking, Black Moon Lilith is found in a sign and in a house. The sign is the energy of that fragmented feminine raw energy that is splintered off. You might only be working with one aspect of that sign, but because Lilith, that darker aspect of that sign, is not being worked on, there's an imbalance. So working with that energy of that sign can be very difficult. The area that Lilith will act out on is the house. Now, when you're looking at a natal chart, when I'm looking at a natal chart, I'm looking at what's aspecting this Lilith sign. And I will get into that a little later, but whatever is aspecting that Lilith sign is very important. So if you have Lilith aspecting your moon, let's say she's conjuncting your moon, let's say your Lilith is in Libra and she's conjuncting your moon in Libra. The moon represents what's it is the unconscious. It's our emotions, it's our feelings. And Libra energy is all about balance. So that Lilith energy is very much unconscious and she lives in your emotions. And if she's not heard, seen, healed, you can have a situation where someone has a very difficult relationship with their emotional life. Transits, when you are experiencing a Lilith transit, that will definitely bring things up for you. And that's actually an opportunity to heal, work with Lilith on a more intense level. So I'm going to talk about two people who have very similar placements in terms of their charts. They have the same Lilith placement. And I would say one is really like an extreme healthy embodiment of Lilith, which is quite rare. And the other is an unhealthy embodiment of Lilith. This will also allow you to sort of understand, like, when we're looking at things astrologically. So, Lilith herself, the conscious embodiment of Black Moon Lilith is Nicki Minaj. And you can look at her chart, her astrological chart, which I'm going to get into. But you can also just look at how she is showing up in the world. And you can understand that she is really the conscious embodiment of Black Moon Lilith. So Nicki Minaj has a Sagittarius sun. In astrology, the sun is our conscious life force. So we're aware of it. It's our vitality. It's our soul. It's what wants to consciously be expressed through us. Nicki Minaj's sun is in Sagittarius, her Venus, her Mercury, her Neptune is in Sagittarius. That's a stellium in Sagittarius. Very strong fire, masculine, dominant energy. And her Lilith is in Sagittarius at the same degree as her sun. So her Lilith is conjuncting her sun. Her Lilith is on her, like, her conscious entity expression. So she is Lilith. She is the embodiment of Lilith. Her north node is in Cancer, which is the divine feminine. Her Chiron is in Taurus, which is about her wound. Taurus is also ruled by Venus, which is the feminine, and Taurus is about self-worth and self-love. And All of these planets, including Lilith, are all in the 11th house. So the 11th house is the collective, it's the community. It's sort of like being out on the stage, and you're giving something back to the group, to the collective consciousness. So what is Nicki Minaj doing? Well, Nicki Minaj's Lilith is in the 9th house. She's a Sagittarius. So she literally is the channeler. She is the prophesist. She has a song where she sings about being a prophesist. The 9th house or Sagittarius is the God house. It rules higher learning, communication, wisdom, inspiration, knowledge, experiences, broadening people's horizons, adventure, freedom, and expansion. So she's here to expand the collective consciousness and teach them and give them knowledge on who Lilith is. She's literally channeling Lilith, but she's channeling Lilith from the house of God. She is here to awaken the feminine into their power, into their darker power, and own it. And we can see this just by the quotes that she says. Women should be allowed to be as hardcore and sexual as we want because men do it all the time. She's completely unapologetic about it. She embraces her sexuality. She's not ashamed. And at the same time, we can see that she really is expressing that very dark, angry, feminine energy, but at the same time, empowering. You can hate me, but why knock my hustle? I'm going to be the queen no matter how they shuffle. One thing about Black Moon Lilith is she considered herself a queen. This is a very dominant energy. Nicki Minaj carries a very dominant energy. And as she says here, she says you have to be a beast. That's the only way they respect you. So she has this understanding of what it is to be a female and be powerful and to think the way men do. So that is actually Nicki Minaj's, it's incredible. Her connection to Lilith is amazing. And I do consider that really like the embodiment of Lilith, while she's also inspiring the collective of that collective suppressed raw feminine energy. Now we look at somebody else, Britney Spears. Britney Spears is also a Sagittarius. She also has her Lilith in Sagittarius, just like Nicki Minaj. Her sun is in the 3rd house of communication, of speaking, of perception, of learning. Her Mercury, Uranus, and Neptune are also in Sagittarius, all conjuncting her Lilith. Her Chiron is in Taurus, so the wound is the same wound of self-worth. And her North Node, just like Nicki Minaj's North Node is in Cancer, is moving to the feminine, is going back home to the feminine. Her South Node is in the 4th house, which really means that she's breaking away from her family and her suppression. Mm-hmm. And her 10th house is about claiming back her power out in the world, but she has to fight for it. Lilith on the 3rd house is the suppression of your voice. It is why Lilith left Adam, because she didn't want to be suppressed. She didn't want to be silenced. Britney Spears literally has Lilith on her voice, on her words. So if she doesn't know how to work with fighting back or using that energy or healing that energy, she can experience that Lilith acting out in the 3rd house of her life. And the 3rd house of her life is her voice and her verbal self-expression. So remember, the house that Lilith is in is where she will show up, is where she will act out to try to get you to wake up to your own power. We can see here that Britney has been very much suppressed. That's pretty much what her life has been. And again, Lilith on her Sagittarius sun is also about freedom. It's about experiencing the loss of freedom and being controlled by masculine energy. And here she says, I want to press charges for abuse instead of investigating my capacity. I want an investigation on my dad. So that's breaking away from the family, being suppressed. And then it says that she had to ask for permission for everything. So it's not just about her she wasn't able to communicate her needs, and her freedom in her own identity and her own needs was completely gone. Lilith is on her third house. So other people understanding her and perceiving her, it never seems to work for her. But it forces her to accept that it doesn't matter if other people understand me, because I have to understand me. She says, you'll never see it my way because you're not me. Third house is also, again, perception and creating a judgment and having another. Lilith there is like the suppression of having your own the suppression of having your identity skewed. So she says here, I can't go anywhere without someone judging me. And then through her journey, she's still trying to inspire others. She says, never doubt yourself, never change who you are, don't care what people think, and just go for it. And that really is Lilith in true form. Like, that is how Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, operates. So we have both these women who are embodying Lilith in very different ways and teaching the collective, men and women, the journey of what that Lilith energy is. And both these women are teaching us to value ourselves in different ways. In one way, there's a lot of confidence, there's a lot of dominance, there's a lot of inspiration. Wow, this is what this woman can do. And in other ways, it's heartbreaking. And we want to fight for this other person. Because Lilith is so dominant in their charts on their sun, they're living out the experience of Lilith. And that is pretty much the Lilith energy and how she works. Now, I would love to take some questions and get more specific in answering these to anybody who has questions. Okay, so Leah Diaz says, I'm not familiar with Black Moon Lilith, but this is fascinating. I have to find out where it is in my chart. I have this question for later. How to make the most of Black Moon Lilith side or facet? Does it have to be evil or resilient and survival? Well, no, it does not have to be evil or resilient. Obviously, we can see, that's why I wanted to use the two different charts. We can see where Nicki Minaj, it's incredible. She's has such a healthy, beautiful expression of Lilith. She's received backlash from people who've criticized that, but she's very integrated. And I wanted to show that example. Really, the first way to understand and work with Lilith is to begin to acknowledge her, to begin to see her and look at her. And astrologically, the way that you do that is you look at where she is in your chart and the aspects that she's making. And when you can do that, you can really understand, oh my God, this makes so much sense. This is how it's showing up in my life, like literally. And I want to work on this. And the other way is, I mean, for me, I'm going to just personally be speaking here. I mean, once I was doing a lot of research for this presentation and really understanding, wow, I really see where she is in my chart and how painful it's been. I just spoke to her, and I started to see it come into my life. But the chart is your tool to teach you how to work with it and where it is, and to spot it and to discern it. Okay, so for men, it manifests the same way. Remember, this is a raw feminine energy that is in everybody's chart. It's an energy. It's a collective energy. It's not about gender. It is about gender in the sense when it comes to the female body, because Lilith is like, don't disrespect me. Look at what I can do. But for men, for men, it can manifest the same way. If there's ever been any part of you that has been dominated or suppressed, or your own connection with the female, your own connection with the female energy or women in your life. I can give you an example. This is a very dark Lilith, but this is someone who has an extremely, extremely strong Lilith in his chart because it's on his ascendant, which is Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein's Lilith is in Pisces. I'm sorry, his Lilith is in Cancer and his rising is in Cancer. He has such an unhealthy Lilith. I mean, that is all about his own hatred towards his own feminine energy within himself and how it's been suppressed. So it's the same way. How it can manifest for men, I mean, it can manifest also for men in terms of the partners that they're choosing. It can manifest for men in terms of the shame that they feel with that raw feminine energy, things that could have happened to them where they were dominated by that kind of masculine energy. Again, it doesn't really matter. I mean, Lilith is still operating there. I'm confused about how to find it in your chart. Okay, so the way that you would...
it right here, the link.
Okay, great. There's a link, and you want to put for Black Moon Lilith, because there are two other Lilith, and I'm not focusing on that today. I'm focusing on Black Moon Lilith. You would type in the link that was just sent when you go to extended charts, H13, and that will show you where your Lilith is, your Black Moon Lilith. Okay, yes. Lilith conjunct what? Okay, Christina Simos, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right. What would Lilith conjunct the ascendant mean? Specifically, I have her conjunct my rising, 12th house side in Scorpio. Okay, I'm going to answer Lilith conjuncting your rising. Lilith conjuncting your rising is, your rising sign is your identity. It's your personality. It's who you are. It's like, it is the constellation that your soul moved through to incarnate into this lifetime. It rules your chart. So if Lilith is on your ascendant, you are the embodiment of Lilith. You're going to go through Lilith experiences on a level that are either very conscious, you're very aware of, and if you're not aware of, then there's almost like a split in being able to connect with your full personality, or fragmenting your personality to please others, I would say. But Lilith on the ascendant is a big deal. Yeah. I hope that kind of answers that a little bit. My Black Moon Lilith is conjunct my rising in Capricorn. How would I go about connecting with Lilith on a deeper level? Again, as I said before, you want to look at the sign. You want to look at the house placement. You want to understand what that is. And I know if you're not too familiar with astrology, this might be a little bit more difficult, but I would really study the sign and the house and kind of start to see, well, like how do I think that splintered off energy is operating, or am I really in touch with that energy? And I also think that a lot of shadow work, because Lilith is the shadow. She's your shadow. She's what you think, in a sense, is like repulsive about you or shameful about you. And so I would absolutely do shadow work. That would be very, very direct connection to who she is. Mine is in Gemini and in the 5th house, and my Venus is also in Gemini in the 5th house. I think it is weird that my Venus and Black Moon Lilith are the same houses. It's not weird. That's a very specific thing that's not on purpose. Our birth charts are not charts are not random. They're very specifically designed by us before we come into this incarnation. So there's a lot that you are working through in terms of your relationships, pleasure, allowing yourself to, I would say, relationships and pleasure. I would start there. Are there any rituals around Lilith, and is there any danger in trying to access Lilith because of the rage? I mean, I'm sure there's rituals that you can have with Lilith. I also think that the best ritual to have with Lilith is to just be by yourself and allow yourself to intuitively communicate with her, light a candle, and just speak to her about like your vulnerabilities, because she's there to help you. Lilith is there to help you. She's really there to defend that raw feminine power. She's there to help us in our chart. If she's acting up or showing up, it's because that's a part of that's her saying, you need to see this about yourself. You need to understand what's going on here, and you need to awaken. So rage, I mean, she has a lot of rage. It's the part of you that has been repressed, suppressed, not seen, invisible, silenced. We all have that. There's rage there. Some of us don't want to ever look at it. But when we start to do that, when we start to look at it, we begin to ignite our inner magic, our inner occult energy. We can manifest things quickly. We can call things forth because we're unblocking. I am working with Lilith in the theme of my work. I don't see Lilith as negative. Lilith is very grounding, and Lilith does not hold back when delivering consequences. She's not negative. She's only negative if you suppress her, because you're suppressing yourself. And that energy comes back. It comes back at you in different ways. It's like karma. I'm going to ignore my intuition. I'm going to do this even though I know it might hurt me. That's Lilith energy later coming back at you. She's great actually, but she is dark energy though. We have to remember that she is dark energy. She is imbalanced energy. Oh, I think I already, yeah. Yeah, no. Okay. So, okay, great. So I am going to be, yes. Yeah, sorry. Okay, good. So time-wise, I do have to stop, but I'm going to be offering Black Moon Lilith readings, mini Black Moon Lilith readings. And in these readings, I'm obviously going to be specifically discussing the sign and the house and looking at the aspects of where Lilith is hitting, and, offering to astrologically dive deep into this area because it's really important. And these readings will be available. The information for the readings is, I believe, on the link below. Yeah. So I will be offering Black Moon Lilith readings. I find them to be highly awakening, highly beneficial. And I can dive more deeply into what that means in your specific chart and how to work with that energy, how to work with her, and also what she's asking of you, because she's speaking to us. Lilith is the part of ourselves that is sort of in this dark corner and is speaking to us, yelling at us, screaming at us, because she is actually one of the most powerful parts of who we are. And again, some of us are very connected to that Lilith in a very beautiful way. Black Moon Lilith is in Aquarius, part of my stellium of 8. My sun is in Capricorn, Taurus, Moon, Leo in the 6th, along with Mercury. I'm quite aggressive, but loving how does she help me? Well, that, again, that's more of a deeper, much deeper question that I would absolutely love to ask if you book a session with me for that, because that looks like that's a lot going on, to be quite honest. But I would love to keep answering questions, and maybe more questions that are maybe not so in depth about your own charts, because I can't really get into everyone's chart that deeply. But I would absolutely, if you have any other questions, maybe something specific, more like maybe more shorter. Like if you have a question about maybe Lilith in a sign, I can explain, or, Lilith in a house, maybe something more simple that everybody can understand. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I am really, really happy. Oh, I'll answer that question. That's a good embarrass. Okay. Okay, so this is a great question from Joanna. If her energy is imbalanced, how do we approach her for advice? So Lilith is in you. She's in you. That's why she's in your birth chart. She's a part of you. She's a collective archetype that is inside of you already. So what you're really doing is you're meeting a part of yourself that is painful and hard for you to meet. Okay? That's what Lilith is. So all you have to do is maybe sit in front of a mirror, turn off the lights and light a candle, and just be completely vulnerable with yourself and ask her to help you and show you the holes in your armor. That's like the first way to start. It's acknowledging, it's becoming aware. It's kind of like when we have a really, our thoughts, we're not aware of our thoughts. We're just thinking, and we're having these negative thoughts. But when we start to become aware of them, it's like we start to awaken. And that's the same thing with Lilith. I would really go to the area in your body that you actually feel some sort of emotional charge in, because that is where Lilith resides. And and I don't know if there's any more questions. Okay, well, it was really wonderful to be able to talk to you about Lilith. And I, again, just to let you all know, you have already started, you've already let her in just by sitting here and learning about her, because she wants to be learned about. It's her story. It's an important story. People don't even know that she was the first woman. People don't even know that she was Adam's first wife, not Eve. People don't even know that. Eve was made from Adam, from his rib, so she could be submissive to him. But people don't know about the original Lilith. So maybe take a journal and, kind of journal about that part of yourself that feels unseen and unheard and repressed and suppressed, and maybe go back to one event. That's all those events is where Lilith lives in you. So just by listening to this and hearing and studying her, you're already letting her in. I mean, this is already your subconscious and your psyche awakening. This is an archetype in psychology. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, we've all experienced this. So I just, it's important. And I will say that I actually just started working with her, not knowing that I was going to start working with her, because I was working on this class, and it just literally like a lot came up for me. I started working with Lilith, and I already feel anger bubbling up that I have to look at. Exactly. That's Lilith. That's her. And that's really good that it's bubbling up, because underneath that anger, I would say Lilith is anger, but she's also grief. It's like the loss of the self. That's what Lilith is. And if you're already feeling that anger bubbling up, that's her. And just that you're conscious of it, now you can like feel that anger. You can start to walk around in life and be more aware of when things make you angry, as opposed to, yeah, that made me angry, but I'm not even going to acknowledge it. That person crossed a boundary, but I'm not even going to acknowledge it. Lilith is like, no, you have to acknowledge that. So that's a beautiful thing, that you're already starting to feel that anger bubble up. That's Lilith. That's Black Moon Lilith.